I think as well, we touched on it earlier, but obviously the Recordsure was founded to address certain gaps in compliance oversight. Has that mission changed or has it evolved over time?
Do you know, I don't think it really has changed. Kind of doing compliance better is still our kind of motto and still what we go for. I think maybe what has evolved is the type of compliance we talk about. So I think Joe Noble, our CEO, always talks about compliance with a capital C and a little c.
Okay.
So a capital C meaning regulatory compliance and ensure that you abide by the rules that the FCA says. But then small c is around process adherence and doing the things that you expect to do as an organization. And I think compliance teams have been seen as a cost center for a long time. It's almost, what's the minimum compliance team we can get away with to not be kind of hung up by the FCA?
Yeah.
And I think the reality of compliance teams is they shouldn't be seen as a cost center. I think there's a real opportunity for them to be a massive value driver for every business. They are the people who are listening to these conversations. They are closer to the interaction with the clients than anybody apart from the advisor themselves. And so they can understand the themes and trends of what's happening and what's not happening. And with the right tools, AI being core among them, if you can get a clear picture of what's going on and what's not going on, you can use your compliance team to drive the training program for the advisors and the financial planners. And that will then improve your customer satisfaction retention. It'll improve your compliance, obviously. That goes without saying, but also your sales revenue. If there's one thing I keep hearing about is financial planners don't really like to talk about critical illness cover and don't really like to sell it. And so there's lots of opportunities where that particular product hasn't been talked about to the client. And it's a valuable product.
Yes.
And to some people, it is something that they really want
And
and absolutely need. And so to do a good compliant job, you should be putting all of those products out on the table for the client. If they don't want it, no problem. But it's got to be out there. And the fact that it isn't sometimes being offered is a negative to both the client and, of course, to the organization who's selling it, because the more you sell, the more money you make. So I think there's a great opportunity for compliance teams to be seen as more of a kind of customer value or customer success type part of the organization than this kind of cost center that sits in the corner. And you try to minimize as much as possible.
I think I absolutely agree, and they are influential to what a decision will be made with regards to that business, because they're there at the point where they need to listen. They're almost the advisor needs to listen to that compliance consultant as a recommendation. So I absolutely agree. Going back to you touched on Australia.
Yes.
Well, I know we've spoken about it in past. There's a lovely office in Sydney. So I'd like to find out sort of what the similarities are, but also the differences with regards to the market and Recordsure overall.
I guess, as with any kind of country, the other side of the world, there are some kind of nuances and peculiarities specific to the Australian market and specific to the UK market. But fundamentally, what we're doing here is exactly the same. And if you kind of strip it back to what the AI does, the AI is evaluating conversations against kind of checklists of things that should be there or shouldn't be there. And if it's looking at documents and working out what documents they are, what date they are, and what's included in those documents, actually, it's a very generic service that could be offered to anybody. Now, I mentioned we built a part of our system 5 years ago in Australia for the Royal Commission. So in Australia, because they say it how it was fee for no service.
Yes.
And so when the fee for no service challenge came about for the Australian market, it resulted in a sector-wide kind of remediation and redress scheme. We got involved through a partner of ours to provide technology to make the remediation process more efficient. And utilizing our AI, what was going to be a 250 FTE exercise for 6 years reduced to a 250 FTE exercise for 9 months, because you're able to, if you do it properly, you're able to filter out a huge amount of stuff you don't need to look at. And so that whole triage exercise removed 85% of the effort from the project almost overnight. Now, it involved quite a lot of training of AI models. It wasn't free. But it was something that kind of completely changed the way that remediation was going to go. It could easily have been a PPI that lasted for years and years and years with thousands of FTE being utilized on very menial tasks. But there's one good thing that AI does, it's deal with menial tasks. And of course, you kind of fast forward 4 years, and kind of the ongoing servicing challenge of the UK comes, which is effectively a carbon copy of fee for no service. And so exactly the same thing, capability-wise, that was required out there is required here. And so we were ready, waiting, and willing to help the industry with that. Now, we haven't got to a industry-wide redress and remediation scheme for ongoing servicing yet, although a couple of the big guys obviously have been hit. But I think that's where the FCA's "you regulate yourselves" comes in. Of, if we go a year down the line and the FCA ask for, via another Section 165 as an example, can you provide evidence of the last year's kind of annual reviews, and it's going to take organisations another 8 weeks of panic and run around and trying to grab all the data, then I think they're going to be in trouble. So for me, whilst we've kind of managed to get away from doing a big remediation redress, I think the industry needs to get sorted on their BAU as a minimum. And if they have that sorted, then they won't get in the situation that Australia were in. So I think there are many things where a lot of the stuff we've been building recently, we're taking across into Australia. We acquired Momenta Group kind of a few months ago. That's where our Sydney office is. And so it's our first kind of feet on the street in Australia for quite some time. We're starting to use the same sales material, the same capabilities that we use over there, and it works perfectly.
Yeah, very transferable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, good. You've touched on it already. What's next for Recordsure?
So the big thing is data extraction. If I had £1 for everybody, for every time I was asked to do a data extraction over the last 4 years I've been here, I'd be a multi-millionaire by now. And everyone says, "Oh, if you could do that, then we'd buy it every time." And of course, it's massively challenging. And the current generative AI stuff won't do the job well enough to be fit for purpose. And so we've been focused on doing that with predictive AI and with AI. As at the front end of next year, we'll be launching that, and that will be a big thing for us. We'll be looking at how to extract pertinent information. We already kind of break conversations down into kind of, here's where they talked about retirement age, here's where they talked about the mortgage amount, and now it's about kind of, can we extract the actual data value from that sentence, from that paragraph, and that's what we're working on for quite some time. That's delivered. So that's the big development I think will be game changing. And then the next piece after that then is being able to validate information across all sources. So if we look at a kind of a typical advice process, there'll be information that's stored in IntelliFlow as data. There'll be documents that have been reviewed with the client, and there'll be conversations. And in those three different kind of channels, you might have the same data field mentioned several times and have different values for them all. And currently, there's no way of validating and kind of identifying any kind of anomalies in that. And with what we're doing now, you will be able to. We'll already have the information on the audio stuff, as long as you're recording. We have the documentation, and then we'll be able to kind of access IntelliFlow data via our API and integration with you guys as well. So it then becomes a place where you can run your whole book across and go, I can feel confident that we provided advice on the right basis for all these clients, rather than, well, that client, he said he was going to be retiring at 63 there. On the phone, he said he was going to be 60, and in his documentation, it's 65. Because obviously, all of these things have a big impact on the advice that you give.
Absolutely.
Especially as, like me, you start approaching that kind of stage of your life.
Yeah, and I suppose given the fact it screens the data as well across all those different areas, it gives you confidence, especially when it comes to compliance.
Right.
And absolutely, from an advisor, being able to relax on an evening and not having to worry about it, I'm sure. So
yeah, indeed. And I think the FCA's buzzword is evidence. It's all about evidence. And so what this does then is it provides you with evidence in spades. So being able to pull a report that says, I know that for these 8 core data fields, I validated them across 3 different sources, and they are the same for everybody. I think it will provide huge confidence both to the FCA and then to boards as well. And you know, the industry we're in, there's a lot of acquisition, a lot of mergers, a lot of selling, and you know, these are the types of things that the acquirers will be looking for.
Yeah.
And they'll want confidence that, you know, there's not a big liability sat in their book waiting to come up. So they'll want to know that the ongoing servicing stuff has been provided. They'll want to know that all the data is kind of cast high integrity, all of those things.
Absolutely agree. I look forward to seeing it. When it comes
I
out.
look forward to showing you.
Great to have you on today. Thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome. Thank you.